Hey Greg. Wait, that's not me. Welcome to Lesson Time with Michael. Welcome to Lesson Time with Michael. Today we're going to talk about stealing and how easily you can commit robbery in just these 3 simple steps. Not really. Don't commit robbery. Robbery is bad. But what we're really going to talk about today is copyrighted content and how easy it is to pirate and why it's actually very legal for you to pirate content in Ireland. Yeah, these rules don't seem to apply for the rest of European countries or the US for some reason. I'm super techie and I've been this way for as long as I can remember, so if I want to pirate something, it's second nature to me where to look. And I know I'm not alone in this. I feel like a lot of people who are even remotely techie know how to pirate things. And look, that isn't me condoning it. Just because I'm saying people do it or I'm acknowledging people do it and how easy it is doesn't mean I'm condoning it, because it's not my property. And I can acknowledge that it isn't my property. But where I'm from, Ireland, it is legal to steal digital content. Kinda. It isn't legal, but it isn't illegal either. It's kind of a grey area. Like, for example, right now I can go onto the Pirate Bay or I can go onto another torrent website and I can download Joker in literally less than 30 seconds. I don't need a VPN, I don't need any extensions, I don't need anything to block my connection. I shouldn't be allowed to do that. I definitely shouldn't be allowed to do that. So last year, the Irish police force, they're called the Gardaí in Ireland, and the Intellectual Property Crime Unit conducted an operation targeting IPTV service providers. And what IPTV is, it's essentially live TV that you'll pay a subscription fee for. Sounds all normal, except technically it's illegal. So this will have all your sports, all your on-demand content. It breaches so many different copyright laws technically and distribution laws. So for example, I want to watch True Detective. I go on to Netflix. Netflix doesn't have True Detective, and that's because Sky have it, and Sky have the distribution rights for it. Damn it, Google. So let's say I want to watch True Detective. So I go on to Netflix like I normally do and I type in True Detective. And it pops up with related titles but doesn't give me True Detective. That's because Sky, which is a television provider in Ireland and the UK and some other parts of Europe, have the distribution rights to True Detective. So IPTV would have all of these TV shows completely breaching all these distribution rights and all these region locks. It's technically illegal. It's basically a copious amounts of piracy. Now I have IPTV. I spend about €12 a month. I get access to all of the live sports that I want to watch. My girlfriend gets to watch all the American TV channels, gets to watch all of the UK TV channels, gets to watch stuff on demand, all for €12 a month. It's a no-brainer for me. Anyways, the outcome of this operation were that 4 people were arrested and detained. But then they were released. And here's the thing that gets a little bit weird. They didn't charge them. They were providing free and illegal, which in this article I found is the way that they described this, content for subscribers to watch. They were breaching a lot of distribution laws and a lot of region locks. They never got prosecuted. And that's because Ireland doesn't have any laws to prosecute. It's a huge, huge grey area that's costing Ireland apparently an awful lot of money. The figure that was going around was $6 billion per year. So since there's no laws to prosecute, what's been happening instead? So ISPs like Vodafone or Virgin Media or Sky have been blocking the IPs to these websites.
That's it, boys. It's over. They got us.
Nah, not really. You can easily just use a VPN. And speaking of VPNs, our sponsor for today's video is NordVPN. No, I'm not sponsored. There's no way I could pull off a sponsorship. But you can use a VPN to get around those restrictions. And even without a VPN, a lot of the time, even with the IP addresses blocked by your ISPs, these websites still work. And there are loads of other sites that host alternate IPs to access these websites. The system is insanely flawed. And look, this isn't me saying that people get prosecuted in the US, even though I know they do, and I'll get onto that in a minute. But in Ireland, it just shows that you're not going to be prosecuted regardless of what you do. The figure that these people were making per year was about €250,000 per year. That's an awful lot of subscriptions to be selling. And not only does this go for just downloading video content, this is also the case for pretty much all digital content, not just video content, but digital content. Like for example, I can download Photoshop from a torrent site and it doesn't necessarily break any laws in Ireland. It might break terms and conditions of the program that I'm running, but that's the extent of it. Music is very similar. EMI, Sony Music, Universal Music, Warner Music and WEA wanted the internet service provider UPC, which is now known as Virgin Media, to operate a system to stop people illegally downloading music. So this was a court case back in 2010, and the ruling by a High Court judge found that laws to identify and cut off internet users illegally copying music files are not enforceable in Ireland. And just a year before that, at the heights of LimeWire and LemonWire and FrostWire, Eircom, the country's largest internet service provider, agreed an out-of-court deal to tackle music piracy. It is understood 5,000 notifications have been sent out to Eircom customers every month in the previous 6 months. They sent out notifications to people, not warnings. Basically what they do what my girlfriend does, which is a little tap on the wrist and saying, stop, don't do this. Or stop, you're an idiot. Or stop being a moron. Maybe she just likes calling me names. Now look, that's a decade ago. So let's go a little bit forward to 2015. In relation to the last story, UPC, as we know are now Virgin Media, got taken to court by several music corporations. An injunction was filed and the outcome was that UPC had to send out 2,500 notifications to users to stop illegally downloading music, and that they needed to let their subscribers know that their service can be terminated within 12 to 15 months if they keep doing this. Now the thing about illegally downloading music is technically it isn't illegal. If something is illegal, that means you're able to prosecute for it. And in this case, which you're still able to find all of these details online, there's a very detailed link down below that will have a case about this and a case about BT in the UK. If you read these cases, they do understand that they can't really prosecute for it in Ireland. And there seems to be an understanding for that, but they still keep using the terminology illegal, even though it isn't. The issue with cancelling people's service after 12 to 15 months is that it's impossible to track. I couldn't find any case of UPC actually enforcing this. And I've never seen that phone please. And I've never seen that notification pop up myself. And at this point, I would have been at the peak of streaming. So let's move on to that. So things do get a little bit trickier when it comes to live streaming. Back in 2009 to about 2011, 2012, I used to stream an awful lot. Now, not what you're thinking. I did not just watch YouTube and watch Netflix, I did, but that's not what I was doing. I was actually the person who was the streamer, so I was the one providing the content for other people. I used to live stream wrestling content because I was really into WWE at the time. And I'm also very techie, so I understand how to stream, how to set streams up. I understood graphic design at this point. I didn't have any subscriptions. I didn't even have Sky in my house. I didn't have a capture card. But I knew what I was doing. And I would find websites and I would stream wrestling content for them. So what I would do is I would find a very good live stream that somebody else who has a capture card would be streaming, and I would screen capture their stream and claim it as my own. I used Adobe Encoder, I had it nailed, I streamed on a file format called VP6 because my internet sucked, but it smoothed everything out. It's kind of like what YouTube does where they kind of blend frames together sometimes, it's basically that. And I got paid for every pay-per-view event that I streamed. The quality was pretty much just standard 720p HD. Now, why am I telling you this? UPC, Eircom, whoever, should have seen our bandwidth. And they probably did know something was up. But they didn't enforce anything even though they probably knew these things. At this point, caps for everybody's internet would have been about 1 terabyte. Now it's changed where it's unlimited and blah blah blah, but at this point it would have been about 1 terabyte. And we were using up an awful lot of that bandwidth. I mentioned earlier about how I know people can be prosecuted for this in the US. And that's because I used to make graphics for somebody who was only about 2 or 3 years older than me at this point. And some of those graphics are on screen now, they're terrible. And this person's website, and I was very closely linked to this person's website, I had full access to his website. He got sued for $6 million by Zuffa, who are the owners of the UFC. Only 2 people had access to this website, and it was him and it was me. Now, at this point, I'm somebody who does my research, so I already knew at this point that I couldn't necessarily be prosecuted for this. Especially because at this point when I was doing it, there was a case in court at the time, which is the one that I mentioned earlier, So it was a grey area, but it was a grey area that was never explored before. So I knew I was going to be okay. So a decade on, am I more careful? Of course I'm more careful. I watch what I download, I make sure it's legitimate to avoid viruses, and in some circumstances I use a VPN to get around ISP restrictions. But I've only started doing that recently. Up until like a week ago I never bought a VPN. So, to summarise, as this video got serious-ish, there isn't an overarching point. I just kind of wanted to give you all some knowledge that Ireland is essentially a haven for piracy. The reason why sites are being taken down is because they're the middlemen. It's easy to shut them down, but it's hard to shut down uploaders or downloaders. It's only getting bigger and harder to control. For example, 71 million people watched Game of Thrones, the opening episode of the last season, and apparently 75% of them watched it through a pirated stream or download, which I have no idea how you can even possibly get those figures remotely accurate. I have links down below that have more info on this topic, but downloading torrents to movies, TV shows, programs, whatever it may be, isn't illegal in Ireland. Next time, see me talk about the year 1989. Yep. 1989. See ya.